Perfect. I think we have everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Hall, and I am the Director of Marketing for Lighthouse AI, a pharma solutions company. We welcome you to today's webinar, 6 Best Practices that Eliminate State Licensing Delays. And before we dive into the main content, we'd like to provide you with some additional information to ensure you enjoy the webinar today. First, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed via email to all attendees within the next 24 hours. By default, all attendees' audio and video are turned off to minimize background noise and distractions. The chat function will also be disabled today. However, we will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, and you can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Our team will address the questions at the end of the webinar during that Q&A session. Also, we're going to do multiple polls today during the webinar for a couple of reasons, to provide a level of audience engagement and as part of our ongoing market research to help quantify the magnitude of issues we're looking at today. And don't worry, all your answers will remain anonymous during any of those polls. So what's today's agenda? We're going to start things off with some clarifications about terms we're going to use today and some general scope about our topic. Then we'll dive straight into the 6 best practices to avoid state licensing delays. We'll talk about some alternative solutions for state license management. And of course, we'll have the Q&A session that I had mentioned earlier. So we're going to start off with a brief introduction of our company. So Lighthouse AI provides state licensing software and services to help companies in the pharmaceutical supply chain fulfill their state licensing requirements with the boards of pharmacy and other regulatory agencies. Lighthouse AI was born out of Pharma Solutions, a consulting and services company started in 2015 by our CEO and founder, Samit Singh. We have assisted over 700 clients and managed over 13,000 licenses for pharma manufacturers, distributors, 3PLs, pharmacies, and more. So who's on our webinar with us today? Hosting today's webinar is Rodney Bias. Rodney is our General Manager of Professional Services and is a seasoned compliance and regulatory professional with over 26 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. Also joining us today is Michelle Ann Jimenez Fletcher. Michelle is the Director of Regulatory Compliance at Lighthouse AI. Michelle is also a Juris Doctor graduate from Loyola University, New Orleans College of Law, and has been a state licensing and pharma regulatory research professional for the past 5 years. Very quick legal disclaimer. First and foremost, Lighthouse AI is not a law firm and does not provide legal advice. The information provided is subject to change and is only intended for the use of informative industry knowledge. And just for a few clarifications before we start, and I pitch it over to the rest of the team, we're going to clarify 2 terms we're using today. First, the term state licensing. We're going to use that to refer to licenses required by all agencies in all 52 U.S. jurisdictions, including all 50 states, including additional jurisdictions like Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Specifically, for example, we're referring to licenses such as California's non-resident wholesaler license or Arizona's resident manufacturer license. You'll also hear us use the term state licensing professionals during today's webinar to refer to those who manage state licensing for companies in the pharmaceutical supply chain. So if you manage state licensing for your company, we're referring to you when we say state licensing professionals. And if you don't manage state licensing for your company, we're referring to the person that does. And just a little bit of scope of today's topic. Today, we're discussing the task management of state licensing requirements. What does that mean? They are the steps to complete and submit your licensing applications and all related requirements. Today's content assumes that you have already correctly and completely identified your state licenses you need to obtain and all related requirements for your necessary licenses. If you are unfamiliar with that step or don't know how to identify those requirements, don't worry. We're going to cover that in future webinars. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to pass things over to Rodney, and Rodney's going to discuss the consequences of state licensing delays to get us started. Over to you, Rodney.
Thanks, Ron. And welcome, everyone. The purpose of today's webinar is to discuss the 6 task management mistakes the state licensing professionals make that can lead to late submissions, cause late fees, fines, and/or lost sales revenue, with lost sales revenue being the greatest consequence, something I actually didn't realize until later in my career. So, consequences of state licensing delays. Specifically, this webinar is focused on tasks state licensing professionals must complete to submit applications correctly and on time to avoid consequences like permanent loss of revenue, such as losing customers, temporary loss of revenue, like the inability to ship products to clients and trading partners, or the refusal of product from clients and trading partners because you don't have the proper licenses. Delayed start of revenue, such as a delayed in opening of a new facility, therefore you can't service your clients, or the delay in a product launch. Also, there's one-time cost risks, such as fines or legal costs to address agency disciplinary actions. To avoid the mistakes that lead to those consequences, I'll give you 6 best practices you can implement now to avoid state licensing delays. These best practices are all within the realm of task and project management best practices. All right, best practice number 1. At Lighthouse AI, we use the term requirement to refer to a license a facility must hold. Then we use the term activity to refer to one of 3 things: obtaining an initial license, renewing a license, or changing a license. Then we use the term task to refer to the steps you must finish to complete the activity, meaning the steps you must complete to correctly submit an initial application, a renewal application, or to fill a change requirement, such as a change of DR. The first best practice everyone should implement is to document all activities necessary to manage your licenses. You'll create tasks under these activities in step 2. But for now, let's discuss what's at stake if you don't document the activities. What's at stake? If this step is skipped, applications may be overlooked, leading to missed deadlines, late fees, potential fines, and/or lost sales and revenue. Why? Because failing to document all activities and subsequent tasks necessary for completing a licensing project increases the risk of overlooking critical steps. Since many tasks are interdependent, missing even one can trigger a domino effect, leading to delays in obtaining one or more licenses. So let's look at the Illinois licensing application for wholesale drug distributors and 3PLs. And at the very top, in all bold and all caps, it says, failure to complete the entire application will result in delays for your application. It says will result in delays. Why do you think they put that at the top in bold and all caps? Because it happens all the time. Let me give you an example. I live in Florida, and there's a rest area on I-95 that has about 20 to 30 no parking signs as you leave the rest area. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Why? Because they used to have one sign, and truckers would still park there overnight, ignoring the sign. It got so bad that they finally decided to put up the 20 to 30 signs. Basically, the signs block the truckers from being able to park there. I use this as an example because sometimes just saying something or writing it in the description is not enough. So why don't people like documenting tasks? So what causes people not to complete this step, to partially complete it, or complete it incorrectly? We don't like checklists. They're painstaking and not fun. They're degrading. We're offended by the idea that we need a checklist. Now, go back to my example of Illinois' licensing application for wholesale drug distributors and 3PLs. The first page lists all the additional documents that need to be included and even has check boxes for you to use. So why build a checklist when they gave me one to use? It's built into the application, and thus I don't need it. Well, I would suggest that you do, or they would not have included the following statement in all bold and all caps. Failure to complete the entire application will result in delays for your application. Also, we don't do it because it's time consuming. People think this task takes too much time or that it's frivolous. People have inadequate tools or systems to track tasks, so they believe the effort to document them in a tracking tool like Excel is no better than trying to keep the dates straight in their mind or on a whiteboard. Not joking about the whiteboard. We actually had a client tell us they used a whiteboard to track all of their licenses and expiration dates. I get it. It was front and center for them each and every day. It was a daily reminder of how critically important it is for them to maintain all of their licenses. People's lack of discipline caused them to believe this best practice is unnecessary, but it isn't necessary. Let's look at a few examples. Why is it important to keep your eye on the activities? Well, let's use Alabama as an example. If you fail to get your license renewed prior to it expiring, you are prohibited from continuing to ship into the state until your license is renewed. It doesn't matter if you submitted the renewal prior to it expiring or not. If Alabama does not process the renewal prior to it expiring, then you cannot ship. If you do, they can and will fine you for shipping without a license. I've seen them request shipping records for entities whose licenses have lapsed. And if shipments were made, they've issued citations. A professional facing tight deadlines may submit an application without all the required documents just to ensure the application is submitted on time, thinking they can just fix it if and when a deficiency is issued and or add the necessary documents later. Well, think back to my Alabama example. Yes, you can fix it later, but if you continue to ship, then there will be consequences. Your organization is going through a change of ownership, and you need to complete the CHOW applications for all your 30 states. Which one needs to be completed first? Is it California, Florida, Kentucky, West Virginia? Well, the answer depends on the prior notification requirements. And without a task list that takes those requirements into account, you could complete them in the wrong order, which could lead to violations, fine, and lost revenue. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Michelle so she can discuss why people don't like documenting tasks. Michelle?
Thanks, Mr. Rodney. For best practice number 2, remember in step 1 when we told you at Lighthouse AI we use the term tasks to refer to the steps you must complete in order to finish or close an activity, meaning the steps you must complete in order to correctly submit an initial application, renewal application, or fulfill a change requirement such as a change of ownership. Well, this best practice is recording all the tasks needed for each activity identified in the first best practice. This includes creating all the tasks needed for each activity, like for each document needed, completing a flash notification, for obtaining signatures, for getting fingerprint cards, for completing background checks, getting customer and vendor lists, getting a copy of the facility lease, obtaining officer signatures, obtaining accreditation or providing proof of accreditation, and many others, depending on the state requirements. Now I'm going to pass things over to Ryan for a quick poll question.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, everyone, we're going to do a quick poll to understand how everyone attending our webinar today tracks their activity tasks. So just a quick refresher to clarify that we use the term activity to refer to one of three things: obtaining a license, renewing a license, or changing the license. So your activity tasks refer to the steps you must finish in order to complete the activity, meaning the steps you must complete in order to correctly submit an initial application, submit a renewal application, or fulfill your change requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and put that poll on the screen now. Don't forget your answers are anonymous, but I'd love to see the results. It makes each webinar unique and interesting for tasks. We know Excel is really popular with state licensing professionals. Maybe it's in some kind of Word document. Some folks have an old paper hard copy system that works very well for them. Maybe a task management software like Jira or something similar. Or maybe you don't even track your tasks. So if that's the case, we have that answer up there as well. So I'm going to give everyone just one other quick moment, and then we'll actually take a look at the results live. So thanks for your participation, everyone. I'm going to close that poll and share the results. It looks like 33% individuals who took the poll are using Excel, 17% are using Word, and right now 50% are using a task management software. That's great. Love to see that. Perfect. All right, let me stop sharing that poll. Thanks again for your participation, everybody. I'm going to pass things back over to Rodney to discuss what's at stake. Rodney, over to you.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for completing our poll. So, what's at stake if you don't complete best practice number two? Well, it's easy to forget tasks because there can be as many as 5 to 15 tasks per application. That's 250 to 750 tasks per year for just 50 renewals. With that number of tasks, it's only a matter of time until you forget at least one task. Even if you got an A plus on your work, meaning 99%, you will still forget 7.5 tasks. Forgotten tasks result in delayed submissions and avoidable deficiencies. So, what causes people not to complete this step, to partially complete it, or to complete it incorrectly? Well, some people are unclear about the licensing process and the requirements for specific application. They fear what they don't know. Employees new to licensing often ask themselves, where do I start? New employees are unclear about licensing requirements or familiar with the detailed licensing process and are afraid they might overlook certain applications or fail to include necessary steps. People don't believe this best practice is necessary, so they don't link the activities to the task. Let me give you a good example here. As I've said, many people think it takes too much time to create 15 tasks per activity, when in reality, it often takes longer when you don't create a task list. Let me give you an example. Have you ever gone to the grocery store to pick up 5 to 10 things without a list because you can remember it? I have, and on more than one occasion, I found myself walking up and down aisles trying to remember exactly what I needed and eventually having to call my wife to ask her what else I was supposed to pick up. Not fun and humbling, but a good example of why a task list is important. So, document task errors that lead to delays. A few examples. A common task often forgotten is validating that all pages requiring initials or a signature have been initialed and signed. I've seen numerous deficiency letters related to initials or signatures missing from 1 or 2 pages of an application because it was not a task. Failing to provide a copy of your property deed or lease for the property on which the business is located because it wasn't a task. Neglecting to obtain the necessary accreditation because they didn't identify it as a task or did not understand the time needed to obtain accreditation. Now, I'd like to hand things back over to Ryan for another poll question. Ryan?
Thanks, Rodney. All right, everyone. Time for our second poll question of the day. So I'd like to measure how big of a problem task due dates are for everyone attending the webinar. Just a reminder, all answers are anonymous, but the poll should be up on your screen now. And the question is, in the last year, have you forgotten to complete a state licensing task because you didn't document it? Perfect. I'm just going to leave this open for another couple of moments, and then we'll look at the results live with everybody. Perfect. All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Thanks for your participation, everyone. And you can see that 75% of poll respondents are doing a great job managing their tasks and documenting those tasks. They don't think they forgot any kind of tasks or requirements. And one person has said that, yes, I forgot to, document my tasks, and I think that did lead me to missing certain tasks or requirements. So thanks for your responses, everybody. Perfect. Now I'm going to hand things over to Michelle to talk about assigning due dates. Over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Ryan. So, best practice number 3, assigning due dates to every task based on prioritization, which is often based on 1, application due date, 2, dependencies order of tasks, 3, average time to complete, and 4, revenue in the state. Well, what's at stake, you ask? With thousands of tasks, it's easy to overlook 1 out of 1,000 tasks due now. Just like it's easy to forget a task you don't capture, it's just as easy to forget a task you captured but is buried in a list of 1,000 other tasks. Said another way, you won't be able to separate urgent tasks from non urgent tasks. The due date enables you to surface, manifest, or isolate the tasks due now. Without the due dates, you can't do that. The same is true for activities, not only tasks. Without due dates for the activities, users can overlook the most important due date of all, the date of the application when it's due. Without activity due dates, state licensing professionals will miss the forest for the trees. Mismanagement of timelines can lead to rush submissions or missed deadlines that can cause late fees, fines, and or lost sales revenue. So what causes people not to complete this step, to partially complete it, or to complete it incorrectly? Assigning the wrong due date is the most common reason, which is much easier to do than you think. Because you overlooked a dependency, such as needing to have an accreditation, you have to factor in the time it takes to obtain that accreditation into your timeline. Accreditation can take months, so that must be factored into your timeline, and the due date has to be adjusted accordingly. Or you underestimated the time it would take to complete a task, like getting signatures from officers. You would think something as simple as a task like getting a signature would be easy, but it's one of the most common issues we've observed in our experience. On more than one occasion, we've witnessed getting an officer's signature causing a delay in submitting a license application. For example, some common mistakes that lead to delays. One of those is common mistakes with changes of ownership applications for meeting the required deadline for notifying the state of the change. States like California, Colorado, Idaho, and others require notification 30 days prior, while states like Arizona, Florida, Mississippi, and others require 14 days prior, and states like Alabama, Alaska, Connecticut, and Kentucky, and others require 5 to even 60 days post. All these notification requirements need to be considered in assigning due dates to both the activity itself and the tasks. A common mistake we see with initial applications is failing to identify all the dependencies, like needing an accreditation or a licensed designated representative. You'll see these in states like Alabama, California, and Florida, which lead to delays or deficiencies. You must factor in the time needed to obtain accreditation or you will miss your due date. Another common mistake with renewal applications is missing due dates because they're obscured by thousands of other tasks. That's why you need due dates for activities as well as tasks. Best practice number 4. Monitor the status of all tasks and set reminders. Here's what to monitor at least once per week with a block on your calendar at the activity level. Expired activities, whether initials, renewals, or changes, and activities that expire in 30, 60, and 90 days. And here's what to monitor at the task level: expired tasks and tasks that expire in 30 days. Well, what's at stake, Michelle? Everything. A lack of visibility into progress can result in undetected delays, leading to failure in meeting licensing requirements and due dates. You can record tasks and assign due dates to each task, but if you don't monitor due dates, you will still forget to complete tasks. And just like you can forget tasks, you can forget to monitor tasks. That's why you must put a block on your calendar. So, what causes people to not complete this step, to partially complete it, or to complete it incorrectly? Well, a couple of things. Not monitoring routinely, not frequently enough to catch expiring tasks with enough time to complete those tasks on time. Not monitoring it in a way that does not obscure tasks. Not having a reporting function that draws your attention to tasks that are expiring or have already expired. Not able to monitor at both the facility level and at the company level, all in one monitoring. And you can capture the due date in a place that's not reportable or sortable in your tracking tool. So let's go over some examples. One of those being you need the designated representative to get fingerprinted. You notified them weeks ago and advised them when it had to be done and assumed they would do it, and you didn't set a reminder to follow up or monitor with them to ensure you got it completed. The week you are finalizing the licensing submission packet, you realize you don't have it. So you reach out to the DR and they tell you they forgot to get it done. Well, now what? Your submission is going to be delayed until the DR can get fingerprinted and the fingerprint card is sent to you. So, like the fingerprint card, you need a copy of your organization's insurance certificate and security bond. You requested it, but because you didn't set a reminder for yourself to follow up on that request, the week you're scheduled to submit the licensing application, you realize you didn't receive it, and now you're scrambling to get what you need so you don't miss the deadline. Or the tracking tool you use does not have reporting or sorting capabilities, and during your review, you overlook a due date. Okay, now I'm going to hand things back over to Ryan for our next poll question.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. All right, everyone. One of our last poll questions for the day. I'm going to put this on the screen now. We are going to measure the frequency at which everyone on today's webinar monitors their tasks. The options are you look at your tasks once per day. Maybe you look at them once per week or even once a month. Or if you want to be very honest and say you don't, the options there as well. So we'll give everyone just a moment to answer the poll now. So thank you all for your participation. Perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll now. Perfect. All right, let's see those results. All right, what did everyone say? Great. 50% of webinar attendees are monitoring their tasks daily. That's amazing. You guys are doing a really good job. 17% said they are monitoring once a week. Also good, and actually what we kind of recommend at least once a week at minimum. And then other folks are monitoring once a month. Not bad, but probably recommend that you do it a little more frequently than that, but you're still staying on top of everything. That's excellent. Perfect. All right, everyone. Thanks for answering that poll. So just like I said, the due dates do sneak up on you fast. There are many steps to prepare your application, as Michelle and Rodney have been reviewing. It's ideal to get your applications in about 30 days in advance to give yourself time for unexpected issues or deficiencies. Also, if you happen to have a software tracking your renewal deadlines for you, like the Lighthouse AI state licensing software, you wouldn't have to check these dates manually. We have 30, 60, 90-day reminders, and all that information is centrally stored in the software itself. Perfect. Thanks again for answering those polls. I'm going to hand things back over to Rodney to talk about securing your checklist. Over to you, Rodney.
Thanks, Ryan. And thanks again, everybody, for helping us with our poll questions. We really do appreciate it. So best practice number 5, securing your checklist. So what's at stake? Losing the task checklist can result in the loss of critical information and delays in your applications. If you lose the task checklist, you will have to recreate it from scratch. This could cause you to forget to complete a task, especially those tasks that were due at the time you lost the spreadsheet. An ideal situation would be to have a single source of truth, like a licensing management software, which would help you track all this information in a central hub for all your team members, with data redundancies in place, like data backups, user change history data, user permissions, and more. So what causes people not to complete this step, to partially complete it, or complete it incorrectly? They're overconfident in their computer's capabilities and don't think it will or could crash. Trust me, they do. They rely on their organization's IT setup to and assume they have recovery methods in place, or that all work product is backed up, which may or may not be true. Or they rely on autosave function, but fail to turn it on. Few examples. You only save the tracker on your hard drive and not your network, and your computer crashes, which leads to the loss of the task tracker. Now you must recreate the entire tracker. You may or may not remember all the due dates and what was or was not completed. It's not a good place to be. Your computer alerts you that you need to perform an update, something you were aware of but failed to complete. And now, as part of your IT organization's requirements, it forces the update and shuts down and restarts after the update. You were relying on the autosave function in Excel and realized it wasn't turned on. Thus, whatever you had updated prior to it shutting down is lost. Or even worse, you had not saved what you were working on at all, and now it's a total loss. That's happened to me before. So, one thing that people often forget is that licensing requirements can change at any time. So, it's important to verify and update your checklist. Even though you obtained or renewed one of your licenses just last year, that doesn't mean that the steps or requirements you have to meet are still the same. You need to validate your checklist and verify all the details on the state board's website or download the latest application and make sure things have not changed. I highly recommend visiting the various agency websites to, one, download the latest license application, check for new or changed requirements, check for licensing types or license types, check for cost increases, or check for changed renewal dates. Here are two other examples of changes to licensing requirements that we discovered over the last couple of months. Mississippi added a new medical device establishment license. The definition of what constitutes a device was changed, broadening the range of the companies that need to be licensed within the state. Also, South Carolina moved their renewal process completely to online and added a new designated representative affidavit requirement. Those are two things that didn't exist last year that now exist this year. So that's why it's important to validate that information. And finally, best practice number 6, version control of your checklist. If you are manually tracking your licenses in an Excel spreadsheet, this leaves much room for error. Without a process or security measures in place to secure the integrity of your data, there are a multitude of scenarios that can compromise your state licensing information, especially if you share it with team members. A team member could accidentally save over the licensing tracking document, or a team member could accidentally delete vital information like all the due dates. There may be multiple versions of a licensing tracking sheet saved to the company drive. Members of your team may not know which one is the latest or most up to date, which could lead to errors. A team member may have updates to a tracking sheet and save the version of it on their desktop or downloaded folder and didn't notify the rest of the team or save their updates back onto the company drive, which can create confusion. Information can easily be mishandled, so you need to ensure you have a clear process for maintaining version control to prevent confusion over which version is the most current, so errors in application submissions don't occur. One example of version control is using a naming convention that includes the subject like company name, licensing activity, say renewals, and date, like March 24th, 2026. Thus, you would name the document XYZ Company _ renewals _ 03/24/26. Another option would be to use a naming convention that includes a subject like the company name, like renewals, and the year, and a version like V1, and require everyone to update the version after making any changes. Thus, you would name the document XYZ _ renewals _ 2026 _ V1. Those are just a few examples. Some oversights that lead to missed activities or tasks. So what's at stake for not having proper version control in place? Missed deadlines, missed activities, or missed tasks. By not having standardized naming conventions for document versions, it can cause confusion over which version is the most current and can lead to missed deadlines and or tasks. Not having clear processes for making and communicating changes can result in confusion and accountability issues that lead to missing due dates. And team members, as I said before, can overwrite existing versions without keeping backups, leading to loss of historical data. So why people don't complete this step? They believe it's too time consuming. They don't understand the benefits of version control. They don't understand the risk of not using it. They feel that their existing process is appropriate and thus version control is simply not necessary. They believe that their work is low risk and not likely to require tracking, leading to dismissing version control altogether. Few examples. A team member makes changes to an old version of the tracker and shares it, causing confusion about which version should be used. Or a team member updates a task but does not inform the rest of the team, leading others to act on the outdated information as well. Both are a few examples. So, a summary of our 6 best practices. During today's webinar, we focused on the 6 best practices state licensing professionals must complete to submit applications correctly and on time to avoid consequences and state licensing delays. Those best practices are: document your activities, document the tasks necessary to complete all activities, assign due dates, monitor your due dates, secure your checklist, and version control for your checklists. Now I have an exercise that I would like us to do together. Can you find any expired licenses on the list? I'll give you about 10 seconds to see if you can find them. Now I'd like to show you how many expired licenses there actually were. There are 4 expired and 1 expiring in 7 days. That's the one in the blue. Did you find them all? If you look, it's very easy to be able to overlook these because of the expiration dates all grouped together and not having them sorted the right way, or the ability to sort and look at what's expiring first. Just a good example of why you need a tool. So before we take any questions, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Tessa to explain how you can implement all 6 best practices with the Lighthouse AI software. Tessa is on our state licensing software team and is a training specialist. She is a seasoned learning and development professional with 8 years of experience in training, design, and facilitation. Tessa?
Thank you, Rodney, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. So, the Lighthouse AI state licensing software enables you to effortlessly implement each of the 6 best practices that Rodney and Michelle presented today. Together, we're going to walk through each of these, starting with the first best practice, documenting activities. What you're seeing now is the Lighthouse AI state licensing software. Today, we'll be focusing on just one of its 3 core components, the management module, which is a purpose-built work management system specific to state licensing. We won't be covering the components that determine required licenses or track regulatory changes in real time. But if you'd like a deeper look at either or both of those capabilities, you can schedule time with a Lighthouse AI representative. Okay, back to management. Here, in Lighthouse AI Management, the software catalogs the list of state licenses that each facility must hold as determined by our assessments and each user. In the leftmost column, titled Requirements, you will find the license name. The one at the top, we see out-of-state manufacturer for Alaska. Then, to the right, the following columns are all associated activities with each license, initials, renewals. We'll also see the activity progress, duration, due date, associated task count, because of course, some activities require multiple tasks, and activity owner. That record fulfills the first best practice that Rodney and Michelle presented today, documentation of activities. Luckily, documenting activities in Lighthouse AI is very easy. All we need to do is click the plus sign in the upper right corner of this pop-up next to the word activities. The system will prompt each user to select basic information about the activity, starting with the type, whether it is an initial license, a renewal, or a reportable change. The second best practice presented to you today was to document all of your tasks for each activity. After you create an activity, we document our tasks by clicking the plus sign next to the word tasks. Because the Lighthouse AI management module is built specifically for state licensing, It includes a preloaded dropdown of common licensing tasks that you can choose from with a single click. Notice the three ongoing tasks on the right side of the screen for the one change of officer activity. At the top, we have fill out form, followed by gather documentation, and finally, obtain application. This is how the software organizes your tasks for each activity for each license. After documenting your tasks, you'll set due dates for each of them, which of course fulfills the third best practice. You probably noticed the task due dates on the right side of the screen, but you might have missed the activity due dates. Because every task and every activity have a due date, you can easily use the Lighthouse AI software to monitor and manage your tasks, the fourth best practice today. People often don't document their activities and tasks because, well, they might believe that work to be frivolous, and they really also might believe that documenting activities and tasks doesn't actually solve the problem of overlooking said activities and tasks. But that's certainly not the case with Lighthouse AI. Our software automatically and continuously reports on the number of overdue or coming due activities and tasks, which can be tracked with the key performance indicators along the top of the window. More importantly, the software enables you to quickly identify which activities or tasks are overdue by simply clicking each of those metrics at the top. For example, if we click the Overdue button, then the software will instantly filter your license list to display any overdue activities or tasks. In this case, we found the California non-resident wholesaler license for our Austin, Texas facility. All of that information is readily available to us in the leftmost column. These metrics can also be found on your management dashboard. On both the management module and the dashboard, you can view the aggregated metrics across one or all of your facilities. These displays make it impossible to overlook expired or expiring activities and tasks, ensuring that you are able to eliminate state licensing delays. That's a really stark contrast to how easy it is to overlook due dates in Excel, like Rodney showed us in that last example. Even if you don't log into the software, we still have you covered. You can set up a variety of optional email notifications. One of those options is notifications that alert you to expiring activities and or tasks. That's certainly something a spreadsheet can't do for you. Because the Lighthouse AI software is cloud-based, it automatically fulfills the fifth best practice. Back up your checklist. The Lighthouse AI software runs on Amazon Web Services, which includes complete redundancy, meaning all of your state licensing data in Lighthouse AI exists in two separate AWS data centers. So if one data center were to crash, Lighthouse AI immediately starts running in the second environment. Finally, our software provides far more than version control, the sixth best practice. Unlike spreadsheets, users cannot accidentally delete 1 or 100 tasks with a wrong click. Lighthouse AI is live, so hundreds of users can manage their work at the same time without interfering with one another. How do I know? Because our state licensing team manages well over 13,000 licenses for our clients using the Lighthouse AI software. And that is how Lighthouse AI enables you to instantly implement the 6 best practices presented here today. So, if you want to eliminate state licensing delays and protect your revenue, but you're concerned about the scalability of your Excel spreadsheets or other tools, you should seriously consider using the Lighthouse AI management software. I hope you'll take the next step with Lighthouse AI and schedule some time to meet with a company representative after our webinar to learn more about the management software. Remember, we only had time to cover less than 33% of what this software can do for you. There's still a lot more to discover.
All right, everyone. Thanks for your patience as we got to those final poll questions. Um, Now it's time for us to ask or answer your questions. So we're going to open things up to you and the audience. There's the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions. You can either submit anonymously or with your name, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and then we'll pitch those to Rodney and Michelle, who will answer those to the best of their ability. Rodney and Michelle, are you ready to take some questions from the audience?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, let's see what we got. Um, First question, Rodney, I'll probably throw this one to you if that's okay. Someone had asked, if I complete my application incorrectly, what does the board do and how do I fix it?
So thanks for that question. So the answer is it depends, but you will receive a deficiency from the board. So, and then you're going to have to decide on how you fix it. So that deficiency will communicate to you, whether it's in letter or email form. Most of them are using email now. What was missing and what you need to do to correct it. And generally, they provide you with instructions on how to do it and give you a timeline on which they need to receive it in order for it not to be the application to be declined or denied.
Thank you, Rodney. I appreciate you taking that question. We got a couple others here, so let's see what we can get through. Michelle, I'm going to round robin this a little bit and throw them your way if that's okay.
Let's go.
Someone had asked, can other boards of pharmacy see if I submitted other applications late, and how does that affect future applications?
That's a really good question. Well, traditionally, no, other states can't see what you've submitted for other state boards. However, as we've noted prior, if it results in a violation, that something could become public information and could be shared with other boards. A good example of this is Alabama. Alabama is very well known for the domino effect. And so, on top of this, they've issued their own disciplines after discovering discipline done in other states. So, just be mindful of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Great. Few more to get through here. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. This is awesome. Rodney, I'm going to send the next one to you. Someone had asked, my company has let multiple state licenses lapse. What should I do?
Well, I think the answer to that depends. You got to talk internally about the importance of each of those states and identify the ones that you need ASAP. Um, Consequences can haunt you. Talk about the domino effect that disciplinary actions can snowball in other states. If you've let a license lapse, as Michelle said, let's use the Alabama's example as I gave it earlier, and that license is lapsed and you've continued to ship, you can and most likely will get fined by Alabama for continuing to ship. So you got to identify those states, the states that are priorities for you and your company, who you're still doing business, what states you're still doing business in, so you can then determine which ones to do and how to prioritize them. But my answer to you is you need to get it done ASAP to avoid disciplinary actions.
Excellent. Thank you, Rodney. This one's kind of half question, half statement. I really like this though, and think it's important. It's something we didn't cover. Someone had mentioned, do you think it's beneficial in any way to include a list of everything submitted with the application? Basically, a checklist of what you submitted, make sure all the documents are there. This person had stated, we have had experiences of state licensing agencies sending deficiency letters for documents that they had already sent and were included. Um, so, Rodney or Michelle, would you agree with that? I think that's a good point. We didn't cover that, and I think that's a really inventive kind of tactic. Yeah,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on that?
So yes, we actually, when we're helping our clients, we submit a cover letter that has a summary of what we've done and usually has a list of all of the attachments that are included. So that way it helps us, right? If they come back with the deficiency and say, oh, hey, you didn't submit your floor plan, we can kind of look at it and go at our own letter and say, oh, well, we think we did. But on top of it, the other thing we do, not just listing that, we also make a copy of what we sent so we can review it and go, okay, we said we sent you this. did we? And if we have it there, we can kind of gives us the ability to go back to the agencies and say, hey, yes, we did provide this. Can you please double check? Or sometimes they lose things as well. So you may have to re-provide it. But yes, I do think that's a great option to do. We actually do it ourselves.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, really good comment and question. Thank you for submitting that. Um, there's a couple of questions about the software. So Tessa, I may throw these your way if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Um, awesome. Someone had asked, does this software have a way to store our licenses and documents?
Absolutely. So first, with licenses, you can attach current and former license certificates for each of your licenses, along with any other supporting documentation, such as like background checks or fingerprints. Um, when we are processing renewals and you need to upload your new certificate, the system will also automatically generate a historical log. So you will be able to view and download all former and then, of course, your current license certificate. Additionally, there is no cap on the number of documents that we will allow you to store, and we will never delete a document on your behalf. So, with those facts, along with our built-in confidentiality functions, really makes Lighthouse AI a secure and long-term document storage option for you.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you, Tessa.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There's another question here about the software. Does this software also help you stay on top of changes across the country for each state?
Definitely. Yep. So when you purchase surveillance, that will include automated and continuous checks for new and changing regulations across all 52 states and jurisdictions. You will also receive ongoing notifications that will inform you of important updates like adopted as well as effective and even proposed rule changes.
Excellent. Awesome. Looks like we have time for a couple more questions that came in. Um, Tessa, we're on you, so this is the last software question, so sorry to pepper you so much.
That's okay.
Uh, does the software remind or inform about other regulatory requirements from different states? For example, this person asked about excise duty or excise tax in Hawaii as a particular example.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, so the reminders and the notifications in the system are based around your configuration. So when we have your business model information, as well as your product portfolio, any regulated products that you deal with, whether you manufacture them or distribute them, and then the jurisdictions that you select. Um, will provide you notifications around those parameters as well as your assessment results. So that is Michelle's team. Once we process and then QA your assessment results and deliver those to you, you would provide ongoing notifications based on either your configuration or your actual assessment.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Um, One final question. Again, I'll kind of open this up to either Rodney or Michelle. Someone had asked, why do some boards of pharmacy request a list of your licenses in other states? Does anyone know the answer to that one?
Well,
So,
I can only surmise. I don't have an exact answer, and as I think they're looking at that, and I'll use it with a few states who they monitor your activity in other states if you're licensed in their state, and therefore if you have any violations, they want to be aware of that because they consider that a risk to your compliance in their state, and therefore could cite you for failure to comply. Home states often want that information as well because they want to ensure that you're doing business as you're supposed to and that you're licensed in the states that you're doing business in. But as to why they care, I don't know 100%. Michelle, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
No, I would largely agree with you on that. I think one, boards are looking to see if there's any licensing risks with you. So I think the domino effect thing has a very big reasoning there, as well as also just where you're doing business. I think holistically, a lot of states care about that. But also, as we've noted, transparency, transparency. So it's always best to, whatever they're requesting, to give it to the best of your ability and however they're asking for you to represent that. And our system does a very good way to keep that information up to date.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Ronnie and Michelle. All right, I believe that's all the questions we received today. So we're at the end of the webinar. Just want to thank everyone for joining us. As always, thank you for your interest in state licensing and Lighthouse AI. If you do have additional questions or think of some later, feel free to reach out to us. Either contact us through our website, which is on the screen now, or send us an email at hello@lighthouseai.com, and we'll reach out to you and answer that very quickly. Also, just a reminder that we have recorded today's webinar, so if you want to rewatch it later or send it to a colleague, I will be emailing that out to everybody in the next 24 hours, so keep an eye out for that. Um, Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great day and hope to see you on the next webinar. Take care.